All right, welcome back to episode 2 of Two Idiots Doing a Podcast. I'm Daniel. Nate's on
I'm
the other side. Um, we're happy to be back. We're happy to be talking about sports. And honestly, we're just two idiots thinking we know what we're doing.
yeah, hey, we know more than Stephen A. I know
That's
that's not a flex, but if that guy can get paid tens of millions a year, why can't we?
that's funny. That's true. All right, so we're going to kick it off with the topic that we didn't get to last week, and it was a trade that happened last week for my team, the Texas Rangers. We got Jake Berger in a trade, and we traded um, three minor league players. And we kept away from trading Kumar. We kept away from trading Leiter. We kept away from trading some of our top hitters. The biggest one that we gave away was Brian Mendoza, which, he had a really good year last year, but, he's 20 years old. It's going to take some time to get him. And with Berger, we have 4 years of control with him, which I think is
Wow,
honestly a steal.
that is a
Um,
steal.
because 4 years of control is a lot. And the guy has shown that he can hit,
Hmm.
and he's shown that he can drive in runs. And with the Rangers lineup already, he's probably going to slot in at that DH spot, which honestly, I feel is a good spot for him.
Hmm.
Um, it would be helpful maybe to get Tavares out of the lineup. I don't think he's, you know, the greatest center fielder, but he's a good fielding center fielder. So
Hmm.
I
Cause
want I want Santander, but I know the reality of that's probably not going to happen because then you could move Langford to center or Evan Carter to
mhm.
center and put Santander out in right field. But the odds of that happening
Yeah,
probably very low, and I understand that, I get that, but a man can dream.
yeah, for sure. Well, I like the move for the Rangers. I mean, just another bat in the lineup that, 2 years ago, I think this team wouldn't have needed it, but last year, um, they struggled mightily. Injuries played a big part, but they did take a big step back. Could you know could have been part of it was just pressure of following up winning the World Series. Had that World Series hangover, and but I think Jake Berger will fit in great here. He hit nearly 30 home runs last year and hit a decent amount the year prior as well. So he's a guy that hits for power, and I think when Garcia or Seager are either out or struggling, I think it's a good guy to just another bat that can make a theoretically deep lineup even deeper. So I would agree. The Rangers really got a great lineup overall. Just need to get a better outfielder to not even necessarily replace Tavares, but make sure he's not the guy you want in day to day. He's a good guy to flex in, but you don't want him in your everyday lineup. So if you could definitely get that outfielder, that would complement the lineup very nicely. But overall, I mean, like you said, 4 years of control. You didn't give up a ton. I mean, I think it's a huge win for the Rangers. I'd give that an A minus at least. So um, I think it's a great trade. So um, yeah. So, I guess since we're on the topic of baseball trades, I guess we'll already just jump into this. But I noted the Cubs are trying to trade Bellinger and Suzuki, but obviously one of those has happened. Huge trade. Bellinger did get shipped to, unfortunately, the Yankees. Great move, a decent move for the Yankees. We'll obviously have to see. Bellinger did take a step back, but he was still relatively respectable. I mean, I think he had like at least 2.5 to 3 WAR. So like people saying that he's a terrible hitter is just like settle down. You could say he's inconsistent. He is all over the place. MVP a few years ago to one of the worst hitters in baseball to a phenomenal year with the Cubs year one to taking a step back again last year. So I would definitely say he's an inconsistent hitter, but overall experienced guy. Um, an additional bat for their lineup, and hopefully for him, he could step up in the playoffs because someone's got to do it. So, and we've seen Bellinger go off before with the Dodgers. So I think personally, for what the Cubs got, I forgot the reliever's name, but 30 years old. He didn't play a lot last year. He was fine last year, but he's injury prone, already 30. And on top of that, the Cubs gave money. Like, of all teams, the Yankees don't need money. They were just willing to spend $760 million for Soto. Why in the world are you giving them money? That's stupid to me. So I think the Cubs got, for right now, they got fleeced. But this to me would be potentially a move. You're getting rid of money to set yourself up to get somebody else in return. That would be the hope. If you get somebody to replace Bellinger, then I think this is a much better move. But as of right now, I mean, salary dumps are fine, but like for what you got out of it, like that's just not enough. It's not enough.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the Bellinger trade was a result of the Tucker, and we all know that.
Yeah,
But I think it's more of trying to dump the salary so that they can get Tucker signed to a longer term deal.
long term.
Do I
Yeah,
think they could have gotten more for him? Absolutely. Um, and they probably should have gotten more for him because Bellinger, like you said, isn't as bad as statistics say. Like he's a good fielder. Like if you put him out in center field, he's
he
not
can
a
get it done.
liability for you.
Hmm.
He's not going to. I mean, he's not a Gold Glove guy anymore, but I mean, you can even slot him in at first base. Like if you need a
Hmm.
first baseman, he can go play first. When you have Jason Dominguez, I mean, coming up in your ranks and probably will play for the Yankees this
Hmm.
year. I mean, the Cubs had four outfielders and three slots. You have Suzuki with the trade of Tucker. You had Tucker, and then you have Pete Crow Armstrong, which I think honestly
Yeah,
is in the long run probably going to be better for them than Bellinger would be.
longer control, cheaper. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a lot cheaper, and like I said, it just dumps the salary so that you can maybe. If they sign Tucker, then that makes sense. If they don't sign Tucker, then it's like, come on, guys,
Then
what
it's a
what are you doing?
disastrous offseason. They're already taking a big gamble on Tucker, right? I mean, let's be honest with how the market just went. And the thing with Tucker, he's not just a phenomenal hitter, he's a phenomenal glove too. He is an elite two-way player. That's why I think personally could debate Jordan's better, but I thought he was the best player on the Astros because of the fact that he's not just a one-way guy. So this will help them in the long run. Got to be willing to pay him, but I think he's probably going to command well above 300 million. He's going to command
Oh
a
yeah,
ton of money. So now you're Chicago. You are the third biggest market in any sport. Theoretically, you should be able to afford it handily, but the Ricketts ownership has shown that they do tend to cheap out from time to time. So we'll see how that pans out for them. But
yeah. I also think it's a good landing spot for Bellinger because you've got that
yeah,
short port in right field. I
yeah,
mean, the dude has a big swing, is known for his power. I mean, for the Yankees, it's a win because yes, you're not replacing Soto with his on base percentage and his just everything he does for you, but you are replacing some of it with a guy that pulls the ball a lot. And that's just what his swing does. I mean,
yeah,
the swing isn't an issue. I mean, but he's going to pull that ball to right field, and I think he's going to have an uptick in homers, which in a sense
yeah.
will help the Yankees. But I mean, I was looking at something the other day, and apparently now they have the top two strikeout percentage people in the playoffs now, with Judge and Bellinger, which is
Bellinger,
not good at all.
not good.
Especially if these guys are going to be most likely hitting back to back,
Yeah,
because I don't see anyone else providing more than Bellinger will.
not at what they're gonna be
Yeah,
doing. Yeah, I don't see Dominguez or Chisholm hitting at those rates at all. That's just not their play style. So,
no,
um, yeah, so that'll be interesting for sure. And the whole, completely random. The whole, did you see the Stanton dynamic? The whole it's Bellinger's wife, and it was
Yes.
Stan's ex. I that's
Yeah.
a bit of a stretch for sure, but I thought that was really funny. It was like, hopefully water under the bridge, but that could be a little spicy, but,
It would be a wild
I'm
clubhouse.
sure Stanton's doing just fine with, however much the Yankees paid him, 5 years ago now?
Yeah.
I think he's over it, but I thought that was funny. So, are there any other points you have there? Or I know we got a couple other topics before we go, I guess, back into baseball or, um,
No, I mean, I don't have anything.
okay, cool. Well, really quickly, sorry, we're still working on transitions, so it's my fault. Really quickly, I know we said we weren't going to talk about NFL much unless if it's major. Well, a couple major things happened. So, we might as well bring it out of the bag. So, really quickly, I will highlight, we did see a potential Super Bowl preview. My dad is jumping for joy right now. He's from Buffalo, and the Bills took down the Lions 48-42. Honestly, score was not as close as what it's reflected, to be honest. It did seem like Buffalo was pretty much in control a vast majority of the game, despite a horrific, once again, horrific defensive display. Um, I was also told they're missing both their safeties and their top corner, granted. But right now, I mean, I would not complain if that was a Super Bowl at all because that game was amazing. And Josh Allen looks superhuman right now.
Mhm.
What is it, like 13 touchdowns the last 3 games? Right? He has been unbelievable. He just looks unstoppable right now. And it as long as he keeps those turnovers down, that was the biggest thing with him. On top
Mhm.
with accuracy early on in his career, but he's got that down now. So if he keeps those turnovers down and the defense figures it out, I mean, I don't see anybody stopping him right now. Of
Yeah.
course, the Chiefs are the team to run through until someone beats them, not named Tom Brady or Joe Burrow. But overall, yeah, great game. Um, thought it was a ton of fun. And then I'll let you chime in a minute, but I'll also just bring up the Kirk Cousins. That is quite the situation.
Mhm.
Getting benched for Michael Penix. Um, Curious as to the reasoning other than the fact that Cousins has like 9 or 10 interceptions and 1 touchdown in the last, like, 3 or 4 games. He's been horrible, and that contract is not aging well. I think most of us probably thought it was a massive overpay, and on top of that it was, oh, what's the word? Uh, Tampering. You tampered for this, so, um yeah, we'll see, how that turns out. I'm kinda excited for Penix because he got booed on draft day because people thought they had their quarterback set, and of course, he got picked at 8, which most people didn't have him getting picked there, but it's definitely an interesting situation. The Falcons are a train wreck. They thought they had this division on lock. Tampa Bay right now controls their destiny, so I thought that was really funny though, and, I know my friend who's a Vikings fan is jumping for joy because he was mad when Cousins left, and now he's reaping the rewards of seeing Cousins', downfall, so, I don't know if you have anything to chime in on either of those, so
Yeah, I mean, the Bills Lions game was absolutely crazy.
yeah.
What can I say? Being engaged just I mean, it turned something different on. I mean, I saw since he's gotten engaged, he has the 13 touchdowns, 0 interceptions in the last 2 games.
Dog,
He has 800 yards.
dog.
It's wild. The dude is doing things that he's been doing his whole career. It's just now people are noticing because he's not turning the ball over, which has
Yep.
been the biggest critique on him. But he just got to get over his hump with the Kansas City Chiefs. They've got his number for some reason in the regular season. He can take them down, but once the postseason comes around,
I mean, it's
that's where he loses it.
Brady Manning, right? I mean, Brady
Yeah,
had Manning on lock and then AFC Championship game. It was different story, so, very similar.
yeah. I mean, but I've always liked Josh Allen. I liked him when he was in Wyoming. I thought the Bills got
Yeah,
a really good quarterback when he came out. And then for the Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix, I think it makes sense, but also you're still battling for a playoff spot, and so
true.
also it doesn't fully
Bold.
make sense to me. It's bold because if Penix doesn't pan out like you want him to, then there's just a bunch of what if questions
You're
of like, what if we kept with Kirk Cousins? Would we have made the playoffs? Stuff like that. And
throwing the season away. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
I
risky.
mean, whether you stay with him or not, you're gonna have the what if questions of, well, if we went to Penix, what would have happened? I think Penix is a great quarterback. I don't think he's going to do well his first game, but that's just how it always goes. Um, the
Mhm.
NFL's different, but I think he's had enough time to learn, grow, and I think he's just I liked him when he played for Indiana. I liked him when he played for Washington. Um, I think he'll be a I think long term he will be a good quarterback.
Good
Whether
call.
that shows this year or not, it's up in the air. But I think, like I said, I think he will be a good quarterback in the long run. Um, he's just got to have the pieces around him, and hopefully Atlanta can do that for him. Because if not, we'll see another situation like a Caleb Williams situation, Justin Fields situation, where they're good quarterbacks. They just got to get surrounded by other playmakers.
Or a better organization that
Yeah,
just needs to figure it out. The
yeah.
Bears are a disaster. Feel bad for Williams, but yeah. Yeah, I and the other thing is Penix is getting thrown right into the thick of things. It's not just any regular game. This is a primetime game, isn't it not? Aren't they playing Sunday night?
I'm pretty sure they are.
Yeah, so he's getting thrown like into the spotlight, which that was the thing that threw me off. I was like, if you're going to be doing this, why are you doing this on one of the biggest stages? Like that is ambitious. And
Yeah,
right and it's you mentioned right in the you're only a game behind Tampa. Tampa needs to lose once, right? They
yeah,
lose once, you win, you swept them. You had
yeah.
you're
You
right
have the
there.
head to head. You have the head to
You have the
head.
head to head, so this is very ambitious of them. But of course, at the end of the day, they might see it as Tampa has a soft schedule to end the year, and Baker's on a tear, so they might think, well, there might not be a great chance that Tampa loses again. We may have cost their uh, any chance of winning the division down the
Yeah,
drain, but
I mean,
it's still on bold. But
yeah, I mean, I think Tampa could. This is bold, but I think whoever they play in the first round, if they make it to the playoffs, should be scared. That defense, the
yeah,
defensive line is the good part
nasty.
of that defense, but behind it is a little bit shaky. But it's a Bulls defense. They always show up, and
Yeah.
that offense. I mean, that offensive line
Stays
is
healthy, it's
crazy.
disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, they rushed for 200 plus yards against the Chargers.
That's insane.
And that's yeah, that offensive line will push people around and wear the defense out in the playoffs. And if you're a team that has to play them in the playoffs, I it's you'll have a tough matchup.
That's a tough matchup, and
Yeah,
to finalize it, yep, they're the only one of 2 teams to beat Detroit, so and they beat Philadelphia, so
yeah,
they kinda own well, I shouldn't say they own Detroit, but they own Philly, as we saw last year's playoff matchup, so Tampa's, gonna be a scary matchup,
yeah,
but yeah, so enough about NFL, we could go back to MLB, knock off some of these here, um, so I guess we could start with the biggest thing, which is Arenado blocking a trade to Houston. And in the next episode, we'll talk about how Houston responds. Is a big thing happened there, but we won't talk about it right now. But yeah, so Arenado had issued out a list of teams he preferred to be traded to. I do not believe Houston was included on there. Um, Interesting that St. Louis gets this list and says, you know what, we're gonna ignore that. So I thought that was really funny. But good for Arenado. Initial reaction. As you're gonna find out here, people, we hate the Astros. Most people do. I don't hate them as much as maybe Daniel or some of my other friends, but I mean, I think that's part of because my roommate's an Astros fan, so it does, and he's a really nice person, so I at least let it slide a little bit. But yeah, crazy news to find out there, and honestly, to me, kind of a blessing for the Astros. I know you're trying to replace, uh, or theoretically they haven't lost out on Bregman, but I think it's over. I think it's gonna. He's going to side note. I think he's going to Boston or New York, um, but yeah, you're trying to replace him, but Arenado's kind of slowly. His numbers are dipping. He's getting older. I think I think the Astros dodged a bullet personally. I know you're trying to replace it, but and on top of that, you got in the Kyle Tucker trade, you got Paredes.
Yeah.
So, and I know that's not like the sexiest or craziest name out there, but you got somebody that's young that can fill that role for at least for the year. And if it's an issue, then you can address it at the deadline. But yeah, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I love this. Well, Arenado's stipulation is he wants to go to a team that's contending.
Yep.
And honestly, with the very little moves that the Astros have made, the only big move that they've done, other than one that we'll talk about later,
Mhm.
is trading Kyle Tucker away.
Right.
Um, and so they haven't replaced that. And so if you're Arenado and you're looking at that and you're like, well, are they actually going to contend? Because
Hmm.
their pitching staff isn't great. You have an old Justin Verlander. You have a Valdez that is up and down.
Yeah.
You have a Luis Garcia who hasn't been able to stay healthy. You have Urquidy who also can't stay healthy. There's just a lot of question marks in Houston, which I think is the first time in a long time for Houston. Um, but I don't think Arenado is off base with rejecting this trade.
Oh no, absolutely
There's
not.
definitely other teams that need a third baseman um, that are going to contend and may be willing to trade. I mean, the Yankees are one of them. Like, yes, you have Jazz Chisholm playing third, but is he like your solution there? Is he because if you get Arenado, you can move Chisholm back to second, which is where
Second.
he played when he was with the Marlins before he moved to center field, or you can move Chisholm back to center field. Either one, it's a win for the Yankees, but there's also other teams out there. I mean, Boston's been in the mix. When Arenado's willing to play a different position. He's said that he's willing to play first base if he needs to. So if you're Boston, I mean, I know you got Casas at first, but I mean, you can move uh, Devers to a full time DH and have Arenado, who's a Gold Glove, Platinum Glove player, play third base.
Hmm.
Which Devers is a great player, but he's not good in the field. He's not the best third baseman out there,
No, it's not.
fielding wise. And so it would be an upgrade in that sense
Mhm.
because you get a historically good bat along with a historically really good fielder. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I think Arenado's dodging a bullet. I think the Astros are dodging a bullet, but I think overall we'll see what happens. Maybe he stays with St. Louis and decides this is the place, but I think St. Louis wants to
Yeah.
reset.
They need to reset. They've just made. You talk about an organization that historically has just done really well bringing up guys in their system. They finally branch out and start trying to trade for guys like Ozuna. And you look at that trade, got rid of so many ace. Was Gallon involved in that? I can't remember.
Yeah,
I know
he
it was
was.
yeah, it was him and the guy that's in my wow. I normally know names, people. I swear, but yeah, they've just kind of lost their way as what they're known for, and so I think to me is not great that it would not be an ideal situation to keep Arenado. I think it's for the best for both sides. Arenado wants to win somewhere, and the man deserves it. He thought he was going to win in St. Louis, and they made what one wild card game against
Yeah.
a super team that almost won to their credit, but they weren't going to win that. So, and then was stuck in Colorado, which we know is not a great situation. So,
Yeah.
I hope for the best that he goes to a team, even if it's the stupid Dodgers. I love him, good Christian guy. Um, I want to see him win. Um, so hopefully, St. Louis figures that out and gets him somewhere. I think Boston would be a great fit. Um, Yankees too. So we'll see what happens with that though. So and then really we could cover two other things here for baseball and we'll move on from the Luzardo thing for later. But first things first is a Corbin Burns update. I have not seen anything the last couple days, but the last thing I saw was there were two front runners, and that was the Giants and the Blue Jays. Which weird to see the Blue Jays being a front runner over Boston and New York, but at the same time, those two teams did uh, get the guys they were looking after in Freed and Crochet. So um, feels like to me, if I'm the Blue Jays, if you don't want to be the biggest loser of the offseason, you got to throw every last dollar at this guy. You want to get something. And of course, granted, spending money for the sake of spending money is not always ideal, but you're trying to you have a very tight window to contend at this point. You're kind of it feels like they're falling apart here. And I think if you could get Burns, you might be able to salvage some of that. Of course, you know, could be a different story if they play in the stupid AL Central rather than granted they were good last year, but virtually any other year the AL Central blows. But it does not help that they're playing in a pretty brutal division. But so I feels like to me of the two teams, I feel like Toronto would be more desperate. Of course, the Giants did just see, freaking Snell goes to the Dodgers, and Lord have mercy on our souls if the Dodgers get Sasaki, I they better win 130 games. I'm sorry. There's no excuses to win less than that, right? So I feel like the Giants are desperate in that sense. They're watching their rival get even crazier. But you got Adames, so I mean you got the big hitter in that sense. So it'll be curious to see who goes if either of them lands them or if we do get a surprise. Maybe the Rangers throw their hat in the ring. I don't know. They did throw their hat in the ring and Freed, so we'll see. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the Giants have to go get him.
Yeah,
You lost Snow. Uh, I know you have who is it? What's his name? Why am I forgetting it? But you still have Webb. There it is. You still have
yeah,
Webb, but you need a second guy behind Webb or even in front of Webb. Webb is a great ace, but Corbin Burns is on a different level. I'm
hmm
surprised that Freed went before Burns. I think between the two, Burns is a better pitcher. He's
yeah,
got better stuff. I mean, he can He's got that cutter that he can run into left-handers. He's got a two-seam that he can and a sinker that he can run into righties. So it's not a comfortable at bat for either side. But I think if you're Boston, you've also got to put your hat in the ring because you've got to fix your starting pitching.
yeah,
Um, Tanner Houck is great. You don't know what you're going to get from Cutter Crawford, and you're not going to know what you're going to get from Bayo. He had a good year last year, but that doesn't mean he does the same this year. And I think having Crochet Burns, Houck, especially if you make the postseason, is a good 1, 2, 3 punch. Um, and then you have the lineup that Boston can throw out. I mean, they're going to be hard to beat. But I think out of all the teams, the Giants need them the most. The Blue Jays, if they throw the money at them, I don't understand it because you're
yeah,
you're you, Vladdy and Bichette both hit free agency next year, and so it's like you get them for 1 year to contend for a championship, and that's it. And it just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. I would rather go
desperate.
try
Yeah,
to
I get it.
re-sign Vladdy and Bichette if those are your guys. But if not, I think there was more of a chance to do other things in this off season. But overall, I think it's the Giants one to lose.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, and the other thing to add to that really quick is I did see a rumor on MLB.com that they could trade Bichette. So like if you're even entertaining that, you just got to take yourself out of the sweepstakes and just full on rebuild at this point and just embrace that it stinks that it didn't work out. You had a lot of promise, and I think again, as I mentioned earlier, if you're in a different division, could have been a different story. You just went up against so many different powerhouses. I mean,
Hmm.
the Red Sox don't finish last in any other division virtually, but maybe depending on the year. But and for Toronto to be finishing fourth or third, and they're struggling to keep their head above water, at 500 ball, it just sucks. They have a decent team, just a to deal with the Yankees. Tampa Bay for the most part. They weren't as great last year, but they've been a good team for a while. Baltimore, they're going to be a powerhouse for years to come now. It's just brutal, brutal division. So I feel for Toronto fans.
Yeah, I also think Baltimore has to put their hat in the ring. They've done nothing this offseason.
Yes, and the
You,
fact it is
you
crazy to me that you're just gonna let Burns walk. I
yeah,
mean, like, how in the world are you not trying to resign the and maybe they are, but the fact that their name's not being mentioned at all, like,
yeah,
and maybe they got more guys coming up, I don't know. I felt like most of their prospect pool is up by now, so I don't feel like they have much left to offer, to bring up to replace a guy like Burns, but I don't know. I don't pay attention to Baltimore that much,
yeah,
so we'll
yeah,
see. But yeah, so I guess that ties into last thing, and then we gotta haul the NHL is winners and losers of the MLB offseason so far. Who do you guys a big winner and a big loser?
I think the biggest loser is probably the Yankees. I mean, at least for right now. I understand you went and got Bellinger, but I think that was um, a reaction to you losing out on Soto.
Yeah,
I don't think he's going to be the guy that they want him to be. And on top of that, your best move other than that is Freed, which I think. I mean, we talked about this last episode. I think it's an overpay, and so I think overall the Yankees they got to do more. You got to go. You've got to go fix the issue, which was your fielding and your defense, and they've done nothing to do that so far. Um, as for winners, I mean, can you say the Mets? I mean, they've only made one big move, but I mean, it's the guy everyone wanted.
yeah, Clay Holmes.
And on top of that, they did get another back into the bullpen guy. So I mean,
True.
they've made two moves to make their team better, which I think is what their whole was. Their whole was
Hmm.
they needed a guy to drive in runs. They got their guy to drive in runs. They needed someone else other than Diaz. They got another guy other than Diaz. I know Holmes struggled to end the year, but I mean, in the playoffs, he was still Clay Holmes.
Yeah,
Like he went in and dominated, other than maybe one or two games where he struggled a little bit with location, but he still went in and pretty much dominated the game.
yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see him as a starter. Um, he was utilized as a closer, so that is an interesting transition to say the least. But I think it could be a decent move for them. As
I
for
mean,
me,
the
oh,
same
sorry,
thing
go ahead.
happened. No, you're fine. The last thing, the same thing happened with Michael King. He was in the bullpen for the Yankees, went to
That's
the
true.
Padres, and had a career year. So,
That's
I mean,
true.
it could work out. It could go abysmal, but if it goes abysmal, they just put him in the bullpen, and he was great in the
Both of
bullpen.
'em. Yeah, makes sense. Okay, I'll start with winner. I won't necessarily say Mets yet, but I will say just individually, Juan Soto for sure is hands down the biggest winner. Goodness sakes. I mean, we were entering the offseason talking about 600 million. And this man, the way he handled it, give hats off to his agent too. They played this so well. They drove the price up an additional $165 million, potentially 200, depending on how that works. Absolutely insane. Other athletes have tried to do this. Lamar, for example, and it hasn't gone as well. It's gone good. It's gone well for Lamar. Not saying he did a bad job, but um, other athletes have tried to do stuff like this, and it burns in their faces. But Juan Soto, he was so secretive. Nobody knew what was going on, for the most part, and he got every last dollar out of the Mets, and I think that's just huge for him. So clearly, it was a big factor for him was money, but I can't blame him, especially in this economy. So as for losers, it's really hard to say. Um, I wouldn't necessarily say the Yankees are the biggest loser. At least I know Fried. Again, I think we both agreed. Not necessarily the great reactionary move, but it isn't terrible. I think he's a good pitcher. He just might not be the guy, in the stadium he's playing in, being a lefty. If he's righty, I feel like it'd be a bit different. Being a lefty scares me a bit more. But and he could be great. I for him individually, I hope he does well. But the fact of the matter is, they did improve their rotation and got a decent starter. Um, Albeit you lost Soto, and then you got Bellinger. I think they made some moves that ultimately, I think they'll be fine. I think they will contend again. I think it's just a matter of how they're going to do in the postseason. That's the biggest thing. I think the bigger losers right now. I mean, I don't know. I wanted to say Giants for a second, but they got Adames. I think Giants for me would be more so to just watch the Dodgers. It's somebody else, which is ridiculous. Um, Honestly, I feel like Boston might be not in a great spot. You lost out on plan A, you lost out on plan B. You got plan C, clearly Crochet, and it's a nice piece. But if that's all you're gonna do, I just don't think it's enough to get you into the postseason. At least the Yankees, they will be back, barring injuries. The Red Sox need to do more to get them to compete with the top dogs. The lineup's fine. They don't need to touch their lineup personally, which I thought, as great as Soto would have been for them, I just think it was the wrong focus. I feel like personally they should have taken advantage of that, with the Yankees and Mets fighting for Soto. I would have focused on Burns. I would have focused on Fried. I would have focused on those guys. Get them while those two teams are fighting for Soto. And I understand you wanted him. You lost out, and we'll see. I don't think it's a terrible offseason by any means, but I think you got to do more. You certainly got to improve that rotation a bit more. But yeah, so with what's going on next, we will bring up two. We'll move over to NHL for a tiny bit. We went a bit long there for baseball, so I think we can start with your point. The biggest surprise in the NHL
Yeah,
is
I
it the
mean,
Capitals?
yeah, I mean, especially doing it without Ovechkin. I mean, Ovechkin goes down, and everyone thinks they're done, or they're gonna hit
Mhm.
a big curb on losing. One of the most productive players ever to play hockey, um, and one of the best goal scorers ever to play hockey, um, and they haven't missed a beat. I mean, the last 3 games they've struggled a little bit. I mean, they lost to Dallas, they lost to the Blues, or not, didn't lose the Blues. They lost to Blackhawks, and
Darn
then it
right
was a
they
close
did.
one against the Blues. Um, and so they may have hit a little bit of a slump, but that could also just be, road trip. They had to go play
Having to
on
travel.
having
Yeah.
to travel. That could be a big part of it. But I think they are the biggest surprise. I mean, Lindgren, watching him play the Stars. I mean, the dude made saves that he shouldn't have made. He's been tracking the puck well. Um, he's overall probably one of the best goalies in the league right now, up to this point.
Mhm.
which honestly is good for the Capitals because a lot of teams are struggling with their goalies right now. And to have one is a good start. As a good start, you're gonna get Ovechkin back here soon. Apparently,
Yeah.
he's skating again, which is a really good sign for the Capitals. Just got to get his conditioning back up, and then I mean, see him back out on the ice, and you got one of your top guys back, and then you can just continue to make that push. I mean, they were atop of the Metropolitan. What last I looked, but I think Jersey now has taken over it.
Mhm.
I mean, but still being second. I mean, no one saw them
No one
being
saw them
there.
up
They
there.
saw them as the last two wild card spots. And
I
so for
saw them
them,
even more than that
yeah. And
personally.
some people saw them not even making the playoffs. But to be number two, I think is a good thing for them. And I think is like I said, the biggest surprise.
I would agree. I mean, they've done a great job with some bring up some of their younger guys. They're still an older team, and I think that was why a lot of us overlooked them. I had them coming in dead last in their division. Respectfully, I just they're in a tough division. They got a lot of maybe not last, but pretty much down there. But they have a really tough group of teams that they had to deal with. The Devils, they had to deal with the Rangers. They got quite a few teams in there that a lot of people would perceive as Stanley Cup favorites. So the fact of the matter is that they're competing and not just competing, they're winning games. Um, and even without Ovechkin, Ovechkin had a terror to start the year. It looked like for a while I thought he was bouncing back from a rough year, um, but he's motivated to break that goal record. Um, it just stinks that breaking his leg kind of put a pause in things. So hopefully he can recover quickly because I'm pulling for him at this point. I think it'd be crazy for someone to break any of Gretzky's records. Is insane. So so yeah, but I think the Capitals did a great job. They got a rough schedule, and the fact that they're second or maybe even tied for first, um, they've done a really good job. So the other thing was now this has not aged well since as of last night, Crosby put up a 4-point performance. So the fact that I wrote this, I might have spoken this into existence, and his gold drought is over. But he did have a 10-game gold drought going into last night's game. And so I was proposing, are we finally seeing the beginning of the end of Sid the Kid? Because I think last year he still was a point a game player. I had not been paying attention as much to Pittsburgh, granted. Other than whenever Blake would text me, it just call him the Penguins, which is pretty much every night, I guess, granted. Um, but yeah, it is surprising to see even somebody like Crosby to go through like that. He's still a fantastic playmaker, but people have noted that this year that he's not done well defensively. Clearly, he's not scoring as well as he's usually not known for uh, being this sniper, but he's still known for these insane backhander goals, right? So the fact that he was slowing down there just made me beg the question: are we going to see him retire here within the next 2 years? Because he is starting to slow down a bit. Of course, could pick things up. Like I said, 4 points last night, so it could just mean he's struggling a little bit. So, what are you thinking? Are we going to see? Is this an end of an era for Crosby soon, or is he still going to play another 3, 4 years? Is he still going to cook?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think his team has helped him in any way. Um, but
They're mid.
I think we're also kind of seeing, his age catch up with him. I
Yeah.
mean, it's always tough to see, the greats of their time kind of dwindle down
Brutal.
and
Yeah.
start to, become mid in a sense. But I mean, everyone's gonna always remember Crosby as this kid that came into the league and took it by storm. Um, and he was so fun to watch. But I think, unfortunately for him, along with his age, it's just a product of just where the Penguins are right now.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, losing Getzel too, that
Hmm.
has killed him, and Getzel's killing it in Tampa Bay. I wanted the Hawks to get him. I was like, you talk about a guy that can help out Bedard, and of course we just stand by and say, nah, let's stick with a 35-year-old instead. Let's stick with Taylor Hall. Idiots. But that's besides the point. The conversation's not about the Blackhawks right now. So, yeah, so that I think losing a guy like Getzel definitely hurts you as well. So, but yeah, I think ultimately it'll be interesting to see how much longer Crosby stays. Personally, I would not have really any motivation. You have nothing to prove at this point.
No.
Like, you were debatable. I'd say the GOAT of his generation. There could be people that would argue Ovi. I would say Crosby's got the upper hand, 3-1. Dominated Ovi in the playoffs for the most part. Really only one playoff loss out of like 5 or 6 tries. Um, so I think, yeah, it'll be sad to see when he goes because I know my best friend loved him growing up. So he's not Sid the Kid anymore. So, but yeah, it's tough to see his team fall apart. That's a product of, you know, winning for so long.
Yeah.
You get rid of your picks. You don't have the talent to develop, and now all of a sudden it catches up to you. A scandal hits you, and kidding. I'm going through this too, but yeah, tough to see. So, all right, we're gonna move to college football. We'll have more hockey content. I swear we will talk about more of it later, but MLB has once again dominated the Cats. So I'll let you lead because I know you had a couple talking points for about North Carolina, or you can just jump into whatever you wanted to bring up because it looks like most of these were you. So
Yeah, we can just quickly run through the college football playoffs. I mean, they start tonight. Indiana Notre Dame. It'll be a fun game to watch. Then you've got tomorrow. You've got the big slate of Penn State, SMU. Then you got Texas, Clemson, and then to finish off the night, you've got Tennessee, Ohio State. And I think it'll be a fun weekend. Um, I think a lot of these games should be close, if not all of them.
Mhm.
But for tonight, let's just start with tonight. Who do you think, Notre Dame or Indiana?
This is hard, right? It's kind of a battle of Notre Dame can't beat the top of the top, and Indiana, as fun as they were, they're controversial because they played a weaker schedule. Albeit it's still Big Ten comp, so I mean it's better than playing Big 12 or for the most part or Pac 2, right? So I'm gonna go Notre Dame. Notre Dame has proven that they can beat. They're similar to Penn State. They can beat the guys that are good, but they're a tier or two below the top of the top, right? I think Notre Dame's going to pull through. I think they're just going to be too strong for Indiana. I'm pulling for Indiana. Despite where I live, most people would think, yeah, you'd root for Notre Dame. Heck no. I'm rooting for Indiana, baby. But I think Notre Dame's just a notch above them, and I think they'll get the job done.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Notre Dame will end up winning. I want Indiana to win. I like Indiana being this
America wants
underdog,
Indiana.
coming into the season, and Signetti just taking his winning from James Madison and bringing it right to
Yeah.
Indiana in his first year. I agree with you. I don't think they've played as big of talents. And I was listening to the Pat McAfee show, and he was on it for a little bit, and I think Pat had a really good point of like he's got his top guys.
Yeah.
But once you get past, the starters, once the second string and third strings come in, it's still the Indiana that lost a lot of games in the past two,
Yeah.
3 years. And so I think that's where Notre Dame's going to have the edge is like they've played in games like this before. They've played in big, meaningful games. And I think it being at Notre Dame, I think that just brings
It's
a whole different thing,
mhm.
style and gameplay to it. And I think it'll just overwhelm Indiana a little bit too much. But Indiana's in a good spot for next year and moving forward with Signetti, and I think they're going to turn into a team that that's going to be a powerhouse. Hopefully, I like Indiana. I like him, and I hope he can turn that program around. The other big game that I want to talk about, Tennessee, Ohio State. Um, there's a lot of people saying that Tennessee can't go play up in the cold because, they're from the South. But Tennessee plays like a Big Ten team. When you got Simpson in the backfield, they run the ball a lot. They've got an O line that will push you down. They've got a big O line, and I think yes, you're going into the cold harshness of Ohio and you're going into the horseshoe, but I genuinely think Tennessee is set up for success. They're not like Texas, or they're not like an SMU where they don't play in the cold and they may not be set up to play in the cold with a run game, but Tennessee's got it. And I think I just don't know. Ohio State may just still be. This is just me throwing it out there. I think Ohio State still may be reminiscing about the Michigan game. Um,
Yeah,
and
rent
Tennessee's
free.
coming in there to prove something, and they're wanting to prove they belong. And so I think that'll be another good game. I think the Texas Clemson game, I don't think that one will be super close. It's a playoff game. You never know what's going to happen, but Texas's defense is, I mean, the best in the country. I mean,
Depends on the offense, man.
if the offense shows up, then
It'll be,
then they're
yeah,
fine.
it'll
But
be
I mean, Texas's defense is the only defense that hasn't given up 350 yards this season.
wow,
hmm The
wow.
only defense left. And I think Clemson struggled. I mean, you saw what happened against Georgia. I mean, I know that's beginning of the year, but I don't think they've played a big time defense since.
hmm
Um, and I think Klubnik has showed that he struggles in big games. He struggled last year. He struggled in the Georgia game. He struggled in ACC play. And I think Texas's defense is just set up to win. And it's just dependent on the offense. SMU Penn State, I like the game. I think it'll be a fun game. SMU, I really hope SMU wins, but
I
I
do
think
too.
I think it's really set up for a good game. I like SMU's quarterback. Um, he's a baller. He turns the ball over a little bit too much, and I think that
I
could be
think
the
that's gonna
downfall.
kill him.
I think
That's
that's
gonna
going to be the
kill him.
downfall of SMU. But that defense is for real. I know they just gave up a bunch to Clemson, but that defense throughout the year has been for real. But once again, you're a team that likes to play in the hot, go into the cold. So you'll we'll see what happens.
You're going into a tough, really brutal environment, no
Yeah,
loss. You're not just
yeah,
going into the cold, you're going into Penn State. So I think that
yeah.
there's an intimidation factor that goes into that. Whereas, Tennessee, you're an established program, right? I mean, Ohio State obviously is a notch or two above them, at least for football. But SMU's just got a whole nother element they got to deal with in that Penn State, debatably hardest place to play in the country. Could argue LSU or Alabama, but yeah, very hard place to play. So I think that's just going to overwhelm them. So I'm going to go Penn State there. Um, I think I'm going to have to agree with you on your defense is insane. Texas's defense is insane. It's just a matter of can Quinn Ewers get it done. I think he
Mhm.
will. I think he will settle down. Just as long as you just have him settle down. Just have him take the short yardage plays. Just get him into a rhythm. I think it should be an easy W for them. Can't sleep on Clemson though. It's a great program, but yeah, I think in theory Texas should won this handily. The game I've been wrapping my head around is Tennessee Ohio State. I don't know who I want to take here because obviously I hate Ohio State, but they've been here far more than Tennessee, and even Ohio State got it done in the very first uh, of the playoff era. They were the first team to do it. They went and took down a really really tough Alabama team as an underdog, and then cleaned the clock out of Oregon in the Natty. So, but at the end of the day, it's beating Michigan, is that going to be on their mind? Like, is that loss once again, losing to them 3 or 4 years in a row now? Is that going to overwhelm them? Personally, I don't think that will affect them as much. I think they'll just have a move. Hopefully have the mentality to move on. But we saw I think it was last year, they played Missouri in that bowl game and they lost. Of course, guys sat out. Didn't feel like it, I don't blame Ohio State players for saying that out. But I think they'll go Ohio State to win. Makes me sick. Tennessee's got a great game plan. I just, I don't know them enough. And two, Ohio State's been here. This game is going to come down to Ryan Day and Will Howard. Those two alone. If they have a fine game, they win. But if they look like they did deer in headlights against Michigan, they're going to get smoked. So I think the game comes down to those two. So, but I think they do get it done before they ultimately lose to Oregon, but we could talk about that down the road. So,
Yeah. So we can end on something kind of funny that we both chuckled at when we saw this, but DJ Uwangale, or however you pronounce his last name, has officially declared for the NFL draft. Um, I I don't understand. Um, I genuinely don't understand why. Um, I understand you have aspirations and a dream to play in the NFL. I get that, but also at some point you gotta let your
bro,
dreams
you're just
die.
bad.
And I mean, he has not been successful anywhere he went. I understand at Clemson it's hard to follow a guy like Trevor Lawrence. That's hard. I will give
Mm.
him the benefit of the doubt on that one.
Follow the
But
dynasty, yeah.
but he went to Oregon State and didn't do much better. And then now he went to Florida State and
Well, I
they
thought he did
finished.
okay at Oregon State because I thought that's kind of what got him on track to play at Florida State. I could be wrong. I
I
didn't
don't.
watch
Yeah, I
a
mean,
second of him there.
I don't
So
think he like dominated at
he
Oregon
didn't
State,
dominate.
which
Yeah.
which is my point in a sense. Like he he's
Yeah.
never looked like the guy that he was supposed to look like coming
Coming
out of
out of college.
college
Yeah.
or
A
coming out of
top
high
ranked
school.
quarterback, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Ranked
so
ahead of CJ.
and so I think if I'm an NFL team, I take him as my like practice squad guy, and if he turns into something on your practice squad, great. Or
Yeah.
if I'm like, I don't know, a team really needing a backup QB and someone to learn under someone, I think he could maybe learn and become a better player than he is. But I don't understand why he just didn't stick around for another year. Maybe it's the head coach of Florida State saying you either go or you're not here kind of thing, and he didn't want to move on to another university again. But I think it would
Yeah.
have benefited him another year, another healthy year because he got injured early in the year and never really looked like himself after he got injured. And so I feel like he could have used another year. But once again, I also understand the fact if Florida State's head coach was like, you got to go. Either you go to the draft or you're not here.
Yeah. One thing you could do, a team that could draft is in a position to draft a quarterback. It's not as deep as last year, right? Top two guys are going to be probably Sanders and um, shoot, the other quarterback. I'm drawing a blank right now, but
Betts.
the top two are probably going to, yeah, thank you. Um, but beyond that, uh, obviously not as deep of a class last year, but you could take one of those guys and then later on snag him too. Patriots did it last year. They snagged May and then deep in the draft, it was an interesting selection. They took Joel Milton, and quite frankly, it was an interesting preseason to watch as a lot of people were rooting for Milton to start, which ridiculous. But you could do something like that if you really felt compelled. Like use him as insurance, basically. And even then, he just doesn't have the mechanics. He did not show anybody that he can get it done. He was just overthrowing guys on easy routes. Like he even overthrew like 5 guys in that one of the first games of the year that I was watching. And I was just like, if you declare for the draft, Matt, like who's gonna get you? But or you could be like the Bears and you're just so desperate for literally a single quarterback to do well, you just snag him. So I think they did get their guy in Caleb, granted. So we'll see. I thought obviously it was really funny, but I don't think it's gonna go well for him. But or he could pull a Kurt Warner. Maybe he does that. Go
Maybe.
play IFL football, baby. Go or play Mexico. Go
Or
play
or
Mexico.
or the CFL. I mean,
Yeah, or even in Europe. I don't know. Yeah, I'm sure he'd be good enough to play somewhere there. It's just a matter of is he really willing to do that? But all right, well, I think we can. You want to cap it off there? Or are there any last thoughts you had here? Um,
no, I think we can cap it off there,
awesome.
and call it an episode.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for listening. We will have this posted out probably by the end of the day. I guess it depends when you got it, but you will usually try to get it within a day or two after recording. So, um, and yeah, thanks for listening in, and we'll see y'all later.
See ya.
All right.